Thank you so much for joining us at another episode of Kathy on the Couch, the EMDR podcast for everyday clinicians. We hope today's conversation has inspired you, sparked new ideas, and offered practical tools you can bring into your own practice. Whether you're just starting out in the mental health field, a seasoned clinician, or someone just curious about the transformative power of EMDR, we're grateful to have you as a part of our great community. EMDR University is here to companion you alongside your EMDR career path. From the moment you complete your basic training, we offer comprehensive support and resources that guide you through every stage, from newly trained EMDR clinicians to EMDR certification, consultants in training, and even trainers. Our curriculum is designed to fill the gaps often found in the marketplace, providing advanced training and consultation and mentorship to you as you progress in your professional journey. Whether you're seeking foundational skills or advanced expertise, EMDR University is your partner in growth and excellence. So be sure to check out our show notes for a full list of courses, and don't forget to visit our swag store at rewired360.shop. Also, check out our show notes if you're interested in learning more about EMDR intensives or want to look at innovative tools like Dharma Doctor Tappers, and you'll find the links in our show notes. A quick disclaimer: the information shared on this podcast reflects the perspectives and experiences of our guests and hosts. It's not intended to substitute for professional consultation, supervision, or individual guidance. If you have questions about how to apply any of the concepts discussed, we encourage you to consult with your clinical supervisor, consultant, or your local supervision board. As always, follow research-based protocols and best practices in your work. We're here to walk alongside you as you deepen your understanding of EMDR. And until next time, keep connecting, learning, and keep rewiring for success. Take care. This is Kathy Couch on behalf of 20 Parmenter. Thank you for being here with us on the couch, and we'll see you in the next episode. So tell me a little bit about, you have this transition to EMDR. How do you combine the two with military sexual trauma?
And I understood by the time I was getting that training that you are not going to talk therapy your way out of all of those trauma responses, because you can't. You're not connected enough to the part of our nervous system that really feels and understands that we're safe to access those other skills and resources. So we're going to keep reenacting our survival strategies. One of the things that I loved about EMDR is that you don't have to talk that much about it. And the trauma really lives in the details and the retelling of things. And that's so much pressure, and it stops people from really touching on those things in therapy. That idea that I have to go and relive every detail of it.
Somebody's dealing with this in the military. What would you recommend resources maybe now that you have developed or thought about or learned about for someone going through this in the military?
There are still some resources available. That's still not enough. There are, depending on the branch, they might call them something different. They're STAR programs, SAPR programs. I know that they are there. My hot take on it is that I don't actually recommend leaning into them. It's my unpopular opinion, because while they are well intended, they're really not safe.
In the institution way. They're still in the institution.
The privacy is not there. And a lot of times, unfortunately, or at least a consistent thread that I've seen show up in stories from clients that I've worked with, is that someone who is a part of that program would then become a perpetrator later on.
So they're finding victims that way.
Sometimes, and not every single person, and still sometimes. So really looking for resources that are off base, outside of the system. And a really important thing is for providers to be very clear on the different types of reports, what that means, and to know whether or not someone has reported it, because TRICARE, especially if someone is on active duty, TRICARE basically owns the chart, which means the primary care owns the chart and you will lose control of it. So if they haven't reported it, don't include that in documentation that could ever be pulled. Keep it in a completely separate document. There are different resources that are outside of the system that are pretty great. Like the Pink Berets, they're based in Texas,
Okay.
and they have really cool programs there. They have equine assisted, they have EMDR, they have groups, all sorts of different things.
So as you think about this, so this client, let's just say this hypothetical military client, what are some considerations to self-establish safety and trust before even starting EMDR? So they find you outside of the system, you then begin that sense of safety.
A lot of it is just in that connecting and holding space and asking those questions and finding out who, if they're still having to work with the person, there can be a difference. Was it another service member? Who perpetrated this? Was it a contractor? Was this reported? Was it not? If it was, what kind of report? There are more open reports. It's essentially like filing a police report, but through the military police. And then there's more of a closed report where it gets reported through your chain of command and it doesn't necessarily go to the military police. So they just handle it in-house. So finding out about those things, finding out about if they've told anyone, how have those people responded? Have they been supportive? What kinds of other supports do they have in their life? And whether they're active duty or reserves and National Guard in a different component, that can also make a difference as far as the resources and how much they're exposed to the person who harmed them. But then you need to look at outside of their military service, if they're in a reserve or a National Guard component, do they have a job outside of that? And do they have their basic needs being met outside of their service? What's their social life like? Understanding in general how they take care of themselves. Sleep is a really big problem for service members in general. Drinking also can be,
Yeah.
because it's really encouraged to binge drink. Looking at a lot of those different things, where do they tend to go?
So when you think about this as a therapist, what are some techniques and adaptations maybe for therapists working with this population that you recommend?
A lot of resourcing. Do a lot of resourcing, grounding and somatic polyvagal work. It's very important because through all of your training, you learn to disconnect from your body so you can continue to push through. And there's this really strong drive for mission first, mission first, mission first, which puts you in a space of white knuckling everything in life and just working and putting one foot in front of the other. So it can be really hard to reconnect to yourself,
Yeah.
even if someone hasn't experienced the sexual trauma. Just for veterans in general, it's hard for them to reconnect to their bodies because it's ingrained into you to disconnect. Most veterans are not very likely to talk much about their feelings. If they were not issued, why do you have them? Getting in touch with those things, understanding that part of resourcing can take some time, to be patient with it. And the attunement is very important. And also to be able to find that line, I've heard it referred to as high fluff, low fluff. High fluffy doesn't usually go too far because it's too fluffy, it's too soft. So finding that Goldilocks space and looking really at all of the ripples of what has the person made it mean about themselves. And did they experience the betrayal from all of those other spaces, from their chain of command, from the other people that they were serving with, and how has that impacted them and
Mhm.
that level of shame, and also understanding their other life experiences and how that might have fed into it, and helping them to establish a different source of identity, because it does get shifted very much into I am an American soldier. It's literally in the soldier's creed. It's the first line, I am an American soldier. And it gets so ingrained. So when you take off that uniform and that is no longer your job or your role, especially if it was taken from you, essentially, you don't know who you are anymore.
Identity is all it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
All that.
And a lot of resourcing is figuring out, who am I now? What am I going to do now? So even finding a job, if someone doesn't have one, is huge.
For a listener to find a EMDR therapist who specializes in this, is there specific training that they look for, or what would you recommend?
Really looking through a provider's profile and looking for mentions. Maybe it isn't specifically military sexual trauma, but looking for people who have a lot of experience working with service members, and make a list of providers and then write down questions before you even talk to them. Ask them for a consult, because even if it isn't their typical practice to do a no-cost consult, you can ask and they probably would say yes. Or you can just ask them a few questions while you have them on the phone or in an email, and just ask them very directly, what's your experience with this? Hopefully they'll tell you the truth.
Yeah.
The average number of therapists that people have had before they get to me is 7.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
And it's pretty miraculous also that they haven't given up by then.
Yeah, for sure.
So
You-
uh, I try to make it a point to acknowledge the resilience and persistence that it's taken for them to go through so many and not quite have the experience that they were needing. Definitely ask a lot of questions, even ask about what they include in the documentation,
I think
especially
that's
if you're still in service, because you need to protect yourself in those ways. And those are conversations that even if someone doesn't ask me that, I have that conversation with them anyway, especially if they're using TRICARE. So
because they
if
own
it,
the note.
yep, they own the note. So if they're using TRICARE and they are the service member, regardless of what they're seeing me for, I'm very careful with my documentation, because I
Mhm.
don't want that to ever be used in a way that could harm someone.
Have you had requests for your notes?
Yes, yes. And there have been some active duty at the time service members that I advocated for very strongly, to not have the sexual trauma be used against them, because when you go through the med board process of being discharged for any kind of medical reason, unfortunately still I had hoped that it would have shifted, but the psychologists that they'll have you talk to, they basically sit you in front of a computer, have you take a really long assessment, the personality, what is that called? The PID, anyway, the one that's usually at the
Yeah.
back of the DSM.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And they don't give you any instruction, just say, answer all of these questions. They don't ask for any context. And some of those questions without any context can make you seem symptomatic. When, the questions about when you walk into a room, do you think other people are talking about you? They probably had the experience of walking into a room and people are literally talking about them and joking about what happened to them. So when they answer yes, that becomes symptomatic, as opposed to no, that's actually my experience. And to know how much you feel able to advocate for your clients and to teach them to advocate for themselves. and to push back at the providers who are part of that system, who might be trying to lump them into a category of a medical discharge and chalking it up to mental health, but not because of PTSD. A lot of times they will try to label you as having a personality disorder
Okay.
and you have traumatic stress injuries that are not being addressed. I can get very spicy about that. It's one of my biggest soapboxes.
What
Finding
about the trainings for therapists? What trainings, if someone is interested in this work, what trainings would you recommend?
there are not a ton of trainings that are geared toward military sexual trauma and star behavioral health providers. They have tier 1, 2, 3 trainings for providers and they're free, which I like. I love free, especially because we therapists are not highly paid.
Okay.
Free. The different tiers will teach you a lot about military culture and working within the TRICARE system and about some of the different issues that will come up. Military sexual trauma tends to just be a little drop in that bucket of the trainings that they do. So there are not a lot of in-depth trainings for military
So
sexual
where do
trauma. Starproviders.org. And they also have a provider directory that people can access. And that can be it could be a fairly helpful resource for people.
Okay. Anything else that you feel like is important to know?
Mm. That it's really something that doesn't get talked about a lot. And even doing research around it, the numbers are very skewed because just like in the civilian world, it's going to be underreported. So the numbers will never really be accurate.
Well,
And that, that even though it's typical to think of sexual trauma in any capacity as only happening to women or children, it also does happen more often than you'd ever think to male service members. And I'm trying to think of where I heard this statistic, but it was that the average time that it can take a male to come forward and start to talk about sexual trauma is 50 years.
oh my gosh.
And
How many of your people that you work with are males versus females?
let's say about 65% cis female and small percentage gender fluid, non-binary, and the rest is male.
So there's
A lot.
a lot of
And
huge stigma.
yes, absolutely. And I don't know how long it will continue to be an option, but for a short period anyway, and still currently, you can apply for disability through the VA for PTSD secondary to military sexual trauma.
Okay.
There are VSOs that can help at no cost to gather resources and records and information if someone needs help applying for it. Yes.
Mm.
And that can help, especially to offset a lack of income or being unhoused, and even just to have someone eligible for medical care, but to give people access to resources because becoming unhoused is a very real risk for people
For sure.
who are discharged because of military sexual trauma. So any kinds of resources that are available for people like that, that will help them in a wraparound sense are really huge.
And where can people find you if they wanted to maybe work with
Mhm.
you or get more resources? I know you're full life counseling. We have our website in the show notes, but go ahead and say it too. So if
Um,
people hear it.
Yes. So our website is FLC, Frank Lima Charlie, NINAZ, like Arizona.com. On the website, there's a contact us form and our phone number. I absolutely hate to talk on the phone. I will give it anyway. So 623-977-0677. And also email is usually the best way to get a hold of me. That's Dana, DANA at FLCINAZE.com.
That's great.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely have a wealth of information. I think that we'll definitely look at these free trainings and these free offerings. I think it's something that we just need to continue to talk about. Thank you so much for coming and having this talk today. I am Kathy Couch and I'm rewired360.com. I do EMDR consulting and training on grief and loss, so you can find all my resources there. We have a free community where you can collaborate with other EMDR therapists in a free resource library. Any closing remarks, Dana, as we close our time?
Having a Fox Mulder moment. Help is out there. The truth is out there. Help is out there. And that there is absolutely no requirement to live in a state of suffering.
Right.
There's none. And everyone deserves to heal and to be fulfilled. It isn't something that we have to chase. And that can be a really beautiful thing to actually live life.
With the new pair of glasses and to be free and healed. So we're so grateful
Yeah.
for you. Thank you so much for
Mhm.
just spending your Friday with us and your time. If anybody has any comments, just go ahead and send them in. We'll get them over. So thank you to all of our
Mhm.
listeners who have joined us today for this conversation, and it will be posted up in the community here soon. So thank you again and happy Friday. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Dana.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to Kathy on the Couch, the EMDR podcast for everyday clinicians. I am your host, Kathy Couch. And this season, we have a new co host, Tony Parmenter. We're so excited to have Tony on our podcast. I am the owner of Rewired 360 and Willow Creek Counseling, where I provide EMDR and couples intensives and train therapists in the neurobiology. My mission is to support clinicians with critical conversations and resources about EMDR therapy, and business practices. In each episode, we will feature insightful conversations with experts in the field of EMDR therapy, from therapists to others who've personally undergone EMDR therapy or those who are just on their journey to building a thriving private practice. Welcome. If you enjoy the podcast, please give it a like in the App Store so we can continue promoting meaningful content for your EMDR experiences.